this month and last month, I focused on Redonda's case. If you guys don't know her case, she is the former ICU nurse from Vanderbilt University who administered the wrong medication. She gave a paralytic instead of a benzodiazepine. She had been a nurse for roughly about 2.5 years, and it did end in the wrongful death of a patient. She was charged with reckless homicide of an impaired adult. She did have to stand in all three courts of law. I do talk about her case. I interview her. I do love Redonda. I don't think that the general public really truly fully understands all the nuances of her case. All the information is not out there. I do believe there was a lot of mitigating circumstances. I'm not here to tell you she should not have stood, in front of the board of nursing. I do, but that's very different than civil and criminal. I do not believe, in my opinion, that, criminal conduct, because of all the other things that were happening, that she should not have been standing alone. That's just my opinion. For all my subscribers, I break down these cases. I focused on her case this month and last month, so October and November of 2024. In the blog, I talk about it, and in the case review, I interview her. It ended up being like 2.5 hours. God love her. We could have just talked and talked and talked. Broke it down to make it way more digestible for people. That's only $5 a month. Way more than I put a lot of work into it, way more than $5 an hour. So I hope you come over and join. I do the annual question and answer sessions as well for my folks. So hope you come over and join. I've been a nurse for 24 years, like I opened up with. Love nursing. I didn't, finish. I apologize, got a little long-winded there. Moved right into the question and answer session. So I started in the ICU, had my associates roughly about 15 years in. While I'm at a board of nursing, I'm working on my bachelor's to master's. I'm sorry, my associates to my master's. I did get my master's in leadership and administration. Never been in leadership administration. I've never left the bedside. I've always been a bedside nurse. Love my bedside nurses. Moved on into all these other environments, like I discussed. My favorite in the environment was the cath lab. I do love procedural nursing, but most specifically the cath lab. It's not so much about the sedating the patient as providing treatment interventions, unlike endoscopy and interventional radiology, where the patient really does need to be asleep for those procedures to happen. Oftentimes can place the RN sedator at risk, especially with our population being sicker and sicker and sicker, and not utilizing anesthesia services and using the RN. I did create a tool in my master's degree that any organization could use to screen a patient, because I felt like we were not utilizing the nurse, the RN sedator appropriately. So I appreciate all my subscribers, and let's just talk about, I touched a little bit on some board of nursing stuff, and that's why most people come to me. So let's just talk about some of those stuff. I'm not a lawyer. I never give legal advice. I'm just a nurse like you. I have been an expert nurse in administrative cases as well as civil litigation. We touched on a little bit. You do need to have an administrative lawyer if you are involved in a board of nursing case. If you're involved in criminal conduct, that's a different lawyer. That would be a criminal lawyer. If you're involved in any kind of medical malpractice case, that's a medical malpractice or a civil attorney. And your case could cross over to all three types. And it is the fiduciary duty of the attorney to make sure that they tell you which type of lawyer they are and making sure that you do have the appropriate representation. Your administrative lawyer should not be giving you criminal advice if your case has become criminal conduct now. That's not their wheelhouse. It's no different if you worked in the emergency room and you had never done labor and delivery, you'd never done cath lab. You most certainly wouldn't be giving your opinion or just walking into that environment because that's not your modality. Can you cross train? You sure can. But your duty would say, I need you. This is not my specialty. It's not my scope. So making sure you have the right lawyer, you got the right guy for the right job, the right female for the right job. I touched on a little bit. You got to make sure, in my experience, a nurse attorney is some of the who you should be looking for if it's practice related. Another one that's come onto my purview and is a big, huge deal. And I'm going to just tie two things together. Theft of time, and let's just say you're stealing time and TikToking out. You're videoing yourself and you're on the clock. Is that theft of time? And what is theft of time? Theft of time is that you are clocked in, you're supposed to be caring for patients, and you are either not there, you weren't really there all those hours. That's what I've seen more often than not. Let's just talk about the travel nurse. The travel nurse oftentimes is not clocking into some kind of centralized system. They're writing down their time on paper. They write their time down on paper. The charge nurse is signing off on it. Maybe not on that day, maybe once a week. That charge nurse may not have been there on Monday. It's Friday. They're just generally signing off on their hours. That nurse is sending that over to the staffing agency, and or they're submitting it to the nurse manager, and they're getting paid for those hours, even though they weren't there for all those hours. That is considered theft of time. They get reported to the agency, and then the organization as well reports that nurse to the board of nursing. Is that reportable, and is that conduct able to be disciplined by a board of nursing? It sure is. That's theft of time. They could also file a complaint. They could even, civilly sue you for that as well. Now let's move over to you're on the clock and you're spending, let's just say, a total of an hour TikToking out while you're doing stuff. You're making money off of that on that platform, as well as you're not clocked out for your break while you're doing that. If you're clocked out for your break and you're TikToking out, I would highly suggest you take that badge off, because you still are you're a representative of that organization. Number two, I highly suggest that you look at the social media policy and what it says as it pertains to you TikToking out, you being on any type of social media platform, you discussing them on social media, on the clock, not on the clock. You see what I mean? The social media policy is going to be very specific. And how do I know that? Because I was asked this with HR and they were trying to come after me basically because I had concerns about some stuff that was happening within the organization, and asking me if I had read all the social media policy. Now, did I have it memorized? No, and I just said that. But I am held accountable, and in my employee checklist annually, even when I got hired, it did say that I knew when I would hear the social media policy. So make sure you go back and that you remove that, or you review that. And then theft of time may be in there, clocking in and out may be in there, breaks may be in there. Make sure you know all these policies. These are going to be in the employee handbook, and then a written policy as well that you said that you would know and adhere to. I don't want to bore you with those details, but those will be sent over to the board of nursing. The board of nursing will ask more often than not that those be sent to them if there's an investigation because those are what you said that you would know and adhere to. They have to know what that organization educated you on upon higher in your general orientation and then your annual training and possibly even unit specific. So you got to make sure that you know what those are, and you can be reported to the Board of Nursing. Back to that for the theft of time. What can some of those sanctions, and it's called a sanction. When you are investigated and then disciplined by a Board of Nursing, you're sent agreed orders, final charges. Basically, uh, the document that you will be sent after you are found to have committed theft of time, that's able to be possibly in video footage. They can see you in a hallway doing something and that you're clocked in. They can see what times you were not on TikTok. They can see you got your badge on. They're gonna have the policy, all of that stuff. That will be all on your orders that are sent to you that you will have to sign, and they're not gonna ask you for formal charges on or about this date, this time, while working at this organization, that you were clocked in, and something to the effect of that you stole time, probably more than once. And they're gonna have that all littered through the language of your orders, where it will talk about like the allegations, your response to those, and then the stipulation. So the things that you're gonna have to do for a certain amount of time. You could be under these orders, these stipulations, these agreed orders for a year, 2, 3 years, depending on each state's requirements, the type of conduct, how repetitive it was. There could be lots of various different things. If you were charged criminally with anything, all listed out there, and how it could dictate how long you could be on these. The date, if you have to be supervised, unsupervised, work days, no home health, no hospice. The setting will be oftentimes dictated in there, not nights, because you have to be monitored. Fines, classes, single state to practice. They do remove your compact. If you're in a compact state, they have to take away your compact and then leave you with single state while you're working out your orders. So the length of your probationary period, that will then have to go on to nurses. And if you have more than one license, in my experience, all the states will then investigate you and mirror oftentimes the same that the initial state did. But again, I've seen that where some states have decided on their own when a nurse is, let's just say, got their license revoked. They reviewed it, and they still, let's just say, a couple years later, looked at the conduct and allowed the nurse a single state to practice, not necessarily a compact. So it does depend on each state.